morning. Welcome to Crossroads. My name is Clint. I'm the children's minister here, and I want to welcome you today. If you are a first-time guest, we are so thankful that you joined us today here at Crossroads for worship. We have a few announcements that we want you guys to be aware of that are coming up. First thing that we want to make you guys aware of is a parenting class that we have starting next Sunday at 11 a.m. They're going to be meeting in the community room upstairs.
Our life groups are kicking off tonight and Wednesday night. If you haven't signed up for a life group yet, you can do that online at makingcrossroads.com/lifegroups. We would love to have you be a part of one of these groups.
Also, another class that we have is a Financial Peace University that's starting on Sunday nights, starting next Sunday night, so the 17th, over at Tri-County. They'll start at 6 p.m. and will run about till 7:30 p.m.
Our Sunday night activities start this week. If you have a junior high or high school student, we will run from 5:30 to 7:30 tonight. Doors will open at 5. We'll have snacks and stuff beforehand. Be sure to be here. We're excited to get rolling this fall.
And also, Little Lambs and Sunday Night Live. That's our Sunday night programming for our elementary and preschool kids. Is starting off this Sunday night at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
One thing we need to make you aware of is we have a full-time janitor position available here at the church. If you're interested in that, you can email Matt at matthew.steger@gmail.com. If you're interested, let him know, and we'll work through applications and process from there.
And also women's ministry. We have them starting on this Tuesday night. If you have a book that you have pre-ordered, you can go ahead and pick that up out at the Welcome Center, or you can sign up there to get your book today.
That's all we have for today. We hope you enjoy service.
Everyone has a story. Some people have a story worth telling. Some people have stories they would rather not tell. The decisions you make today will determine the stories you tell tomorrow. A successful life is not made up of a few big decisions, but of hundreds and hundreds of small ones. What will your story be? My story, living the story you want to tell.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good. It's good to see you. Glad you're here. Hey, we're continuing in this story series. Last week, we launched it talking about this idea how we all have a story. Each one of us, we have a story. And whether or not we realize it, we're telling a story with our lives. And we kind of landed on this idea, this challenge to live a life, live a story that points towards Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean that we just stop everything we're doing. It means that in the arenas of our life, where we're telling this story with our lives, that in those arenas we point towards Jesus. So at school and at work, the ball teams we're on, the clubs that we're in, and the teams that we're a part of, we point towards Jesus. No matter where we're at in life, the story that we're telling is about Him, because God's the one who's telling the story in us and through us. We're all living out this story, and ultimately our story should point towards Jesus. And we started off looking at the disciples, which were Jesus' closest followers. These were the guys that He spent the most time with. And over the course of this series, we're looking at kind of where their journey began with Jesus, and from that, where it eventually goes. And so last week we looked at when the disciples were called, this ragtag group of sailors, that all of a sudden were called to just drop what they were doing and come and follow Jesus. And there was something about that moment they said, yeah, I'm in. And so as they said, yeah, I'm in, as they jump out of the boats, as they drop their nets, as they leave their parents behind and run and follow Jesus, what does that look like for their story moving ahead? You see, when they made that choice, their story began to change. And as they have followed Jesus, as they have learned from Jesus, as they have observed Jesus, their story just continues to change, which should be true of us as well. The longer that we know Jesus, the more that we get to know Jesus, our story should continue to change. This morning, we're going to spend some time looking at a conversation that Jesus is having with his disciples. And it's shortly before he is about to get arrested and put on trial. And he's having this conversation, and it's a conversation that defines where their relationship has come to. And there's a shift in this conversation that we can't miss. Because, you see, the truth is that your story is meant to connect to other people. My story is meant to connect to other people. It's not that we just have a story. It's meant to connect to others. And when we come every week and we sit in this room, we're not just here to attend something. We're not just here to observe something. We're here to be a part of something. And being a part requires relationships with others. I want to pray. We're going to jump in. God, I'm so thankful this morning that we can be together in this room. And Father, we might not know each other. We might not know everyone around the room. But Father, we're thankful that we're here together. And we're not just here to observe, but we're here to be a part. And so, God, I pray that as we look at a conversation between Jesus and his disciples and their relationship, God, I pray that it will challenge ours. I pray that your Spirit moves in this room. God, whether we came here ready to hear what you have or not, and I pray that you will speak loudly. God, I'm thankful that because of your grace, a room full of sinful people can get together and learn about you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I've got a buddy, his name's Sean. And Sean is the first friend that I can really remember, being close to. My buddy Sean, he's one of those people that kind of makes you want to be better. Do you have one of those friends? It challenges you to be better. My buddy Sean, when we first started at this new church, when we moved up to Buffalo, Sean was one of the first guys that I met. And I connected with Sean because at the time we were both Husky fifth graders. Okay, well, he was in fourth grade. I was in fifth grade. But we were both Husky kids in the fourth and fifth grade Sunday school class. Plus, we were the only two guys in the class, so it kind of made it easy. But we connected and we started talking. I remember Sean was the first guy that I, kind of hung out with and spent time with that was kind of connected to the church at all. And Sean, we grew up together all the way through high school. We went to the same college. And Sean's one of those guys, he always challenged me to be better. Okay? And not just better at a talent. Sean always challenged me to work harder. When we were in college, Sean was always in his dorm studying where I should have been, all right? But he always challenged me to work harder, to study more. Okay? Someplace in middle school, Sean and I, like I said, we were always kind of the Husky guys, and all of a sudden Sean showed up at church one night, and he was like half the person he was. And I was like, Sean, what are you doing here? It's like, you're leaving me hanging out here by myself. He's like, oh, sorry, or whatever. And so Sean lost weight, so he challenged me. He challenged me to be active. My buddy Sean, he is always working out, okay? Even in the smallest ways, he's always working out. We'd be standing in line in the cafeteria in college, and Sean would be doing leg raises. Just standing there. I said, Sean, what are you doing? Working out? Like, okay. I'm excited about this pizza. He's like, I'm getting a salad. I was like, okay, thanks, pal. But all the time, when he was reading his textbooks, he's walking up and down the hall. Like, he's always working out. He challenged me to be better. He challenged me to love the church. He challenged me to love the city that we lived in more. You see, Sean was one of those friends that you could be completely real with. You didn't have to pretend. You didn't have to put some fake mask on or whatever. Like, you just say where you were at, and Sean was good with it. He was the first friend that I remember that challenged me to not just stay where I was. You see, it's these type of relationships that God designed for us. You see, our story is meant to connect to other people that move us closer to Jesus. And when we look at this conversation that Jesus has with his disciples, the closest people he's got on earth, it's within this conversation that we see Jesus move these guys' story forward just a little bit. If you brought a Bible, we're going to be in John chapter 15. John chapter 15, it'll be on the screen. You can look it up on your phone if you like. As we look into this conversation, Jesus is sitting around a table. He's in an upper room. This conversation is known as the upper room discourse. He's sitting in an upper room. He's having a conversation, and he is using this analogy of the vine and branches. And in the first part of this chapter, he's talking to his disciples. He says, I'm the vine, you are the branches, and the whole point of the conversation is for them to stay connected to Jesus. Because what Jesus knows, and they don't quite realize, is what is about to happen to Jesus. He's about to be arrested. He's about to be killed. He's about to be put into a grave. And so this is like the training conversation of remain in me, stay close to me, stay connected with me. Continue to draw close to me. And as he uses this illustration, challenging them, don't walk away when things get hard. Don't give up. He then slides in to kind of this defining moment for these guys sitting around this table. And he says to them, beginning in verse 12, John chapter 15, beginning in verse 12, he says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command, love each other. You see, as we look at these words this morning, here's what we need to know right out of the gate. Our bottom line, our truth for this morning is this: godly relationships move our faith forward. Godly relationships move our faith forward. And if these are the type of relationships that we're supposed to have, then what does it look like? How does it happen? If we're supposed to have relationships and friendships that challenge us to move forward and closer to Jesus, then how does it work? This morning, I want us to ask ourselves three questions. Three questions to help us move our story forward in relationships. If our story is meant to connect to others, then how does it happen? Question number one. Question number one this morning is, am I a friend of Jesus? And that seems strange to ask a little bit, because oftentimes we don't think of Jesus as a friend, do we? Because oftentimes we have this jaded view of God, that we only have a relationship with him based on things that we want, right? I need God to do this for me. I need God to do this for my family. I need him to change this. I need this to be different. And so we have this relationship with God that's built off of what we get from him. But really, it's so much more than that. In verse 12, Jesus gives this command as he's talking to what now is he calls his greatest friends. He says, love each other as what? As I've given to you? No. As I have fixed for you? No. He says, love one another as I have loved you. You see, there's this mutual exchange of friendship. And Jesus says to these guys, he says, listen, this relationship that we have, it's not just a you get from. And for a while, that's what these guys have seen. I mean, they were trained under Jesus. They saw Jesus heal people miraculously. They were taught different lessons by Jesus. And they saw all of these things. And so he's been here, and they've been kind of reaching to attain. And now Jesus makes this shift. He makes this shift. And he says, my relationship with you is more than just obedience. There's so much more. And for a lot of these guys, they have been hopeful of this relationship. You and I, we get the privilege of having this type of relationship with Jesus. Well, how does that happen? Well, just like you get to know any other friend, you get to know Jesus. You spend time reading about what he's about and learning from him. You spend time praying and talking to him, just like you would any other friendship. I mean, you don't have best friends with people that you don't talk to, right? You're best friends with people. You're good friends with people that you converse with, you have conversation with. Think of it this way. Think of a famous person. Everybody participate right now. Think of a famous person that you wish you could be friends with. Like one person that you wish, like if I had the opportunity to be friends with one person who's famous, who would it be? Everyone got that? All right, here's what I want you to do. On the count of 3, we're going to say those names out loud. All right? Don't be ashamed. First service, guy second row yells at me, Justin Bieber. All right, so if that's our baseline, we're going to make it, okay? All right? I've set up counseling with him later this week, but anyway. All right, so one person that if we could be friends with, okay, someone who's famous, who would it be? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good job. Yeah, okay, and so there's this one person that we hope, okay, that maybe if it all worked out that we could be friends with. And we recognize that if there was that person, it would take work, right? Something would have to happen for you to be friends with this person. It would take work, it would take effort, and the same is true for Jesus. You don't just know Jesus, you get to know Jesus. It takes work, it takes effort. And so the question is am I a friend of Jesus, or do I just approach him as wanting something from him? And Jesus even knows that this is the case because he addresses this. With his disciples, he says, listen, I no longer call you servants. I don't call you a servant anymore. I call you a friend. A servant, he doesn't know the whole scheme of things. He doesn't know the whole plan of things. And Jesus says, I don't call you a servant anymore because I've given you the keys. I've showed you everything that there is. You see, a servant is obedient based. All right, and so if you are obedient, then you get these things. You maybe get paid, or you maybe get housing, or you maybe get food provided. That's what a servant receives something in return. And so you do these tasks and you are obedient because you get this in return. And what Jesus does is he shifts. And he says, I no longer call you servants because I've showed you the whole plan. I now call you friends. And friendship obeys because they love the other person. It's not obedience and behavior based to get something. It's friendship that obeys because of love for the other person. It's not check marks of good or bad. It's just this friendship because of love for one another. And that is what Jesus calls the disciples to. If we're to have a relationship that moves forward, if we're to connect with other people, then it begins with this question of, am I a friend of Jesus? And this was a huge transition for the disciples. It's at this moment where their story is moved forward. It's where their story takes a step forward. See, because godly relationships move our faith forward. Question 1 is, am I a friend of Jesus? Question 2 is, am I a friend like Jesus? Am I a friend like Jesus? Verse 13 says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. Wait a minute, Matt. If I'm going to be good friends with someone, then I got to jump out in traffic for them? I don't know. I mean, they're friends, but no, wait a minute. You see, the meaning behind this is that friendship like Jesus is not based on conditions. I've heard of too many friendships of people in the church that someone said something that someone else disagreed with, and now they don't even talk. That's not a friend like Jesus. You see, because as Jesus gives the definition of what this friendship looks like, what this relationship looks like, it's this relationship that's built on unconditional sacrificial love. It's a friendship that doesn't just walk away when we don't get our way. It's a friendship that stays. It's a friendship that lasts. Am I a friend like Jesus? Am I willing to sacrifice my time for the people around me? Am I willing to give up an evening to help someone else out? Am I willing to cook a meal for someone who needs it? Am I a friend like Jesus? And part of that is Jesus speaks truth into the disciples' lives over and over and over again. And we see Jesus, there's walking along the road. He says, hey, my kingdom is like, hey, faith is like. And then he tells a story. And he's speaking truth into the disciples' lives. Question this morning. Who do you have in your life? Who do you have in your life that is speaking truth into your life that moves you closer to Jesus? No one. I just get mad every time someone says something to me like that. See, if we're to be a friend like Jesus, it means that we receive godly truth from other people. If people are wanting to help us become more like Jesus, then we receive that truth. No, it might not be comfortable, it might not be easy. But if the goal is for us to move our faith forward, then godly relationships that speak truth into our life are a necessity. Who is it in your life that you have right now? And if they see something in your life, if they see some sort of distraction moving into your life, if they see something in you that is beginning to corrupt you from the inside out, that they're going to say, listen, I see this in you and I'm telling you because I love you. And we receive it. Godly relationships move our faith forward. They don't let it sit still. If we are a friend of Jesus, and we are a friend like Jesus, then there's something else that happens that Jesus describes to his disciples in verse 16. He says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go bear fruit, fruit that will last. And question number 3 is, am I multiplying these friendships? Am I multiplying these friendships? Jesus tells his disciples that, listen, if you're going to carry this out, then you need to go and bear fruit. Well, Jesus, I don't know how to grow fruit. And he's not talking in a literal sense, like go out back and plant an apple tree. That's not what he's talking about. You see, bearing fruit, we learn that later on in the New Testament that the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. The fruit of the Spirit, which means that if we are a friend of Jesus and we are a friend like Jesus, then we are multiplying this friendship. We're bearing fruit. We're reaching out further and further. We're carrying this out further and further. There is this multiplying factor. But where we're willing to have conversations, we're willing to have friendships that reach out because we want to bear fruit. And what I've noticed is there's kind of this new trend in the busyness of our schedule and all of the things to do is that we retreat and isolate after all the to-do lists are done. Like if someone looks at our life, say, oh man, I see them everywhere. But if someone were to ask you, how many people really know you? No one. Because I get the kids here, and I pick them up here, and I take them here, and we go here together, and we get this done, and we get this done. And when it's all said and done, all I want to do is go home and sit on the couch. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here. And I understand rest, and I'm not saying that's bad or anything like that. But what happens is oftentimes we become so busy with all of the tasks that we have no relationships with anyone. We just have a relationship with our to-do list. And so instead of connecting our story with others, instead of our relationships multiplying and bearing fruit, instead we isolate. We retreat back home and we hide. And the problem is that isolation is idolatry to self and robs us of God-designed relationships. When we separate ourselves from anyone else following Jesus, we give Satan the upper hand in our lives. It's okay to be alone sometimes. But if our goal is to be alone, that's not the relationships that God has designed us for. And I know what some of us in the room are thinking, well, Matt, that's great for the extroverts, but I'm an introvert. Listen, very lovingly, and I understand I'm an extrovert, but your personality does not give you an out clause to obedience to Jesus. Just because you're an introvert does not mean we don't bear fruit when it comes to our relationships. No, you might not be the person on stage and you might not be the person with the megaphone in a crowd, but you could be the best person getting coffee with one person. You could be the very best person at sitting down with someone over lunch. Multiplying and bearing fruit does not require a crowd. It requires a desire to sit down and have a relationship with someone. Question number 1 is, am I a friend of Jesus? Question number 2 is, am I a friend like Jesus? And question 3 is, am I multiplying these friendships? You see, God designed our story to connect with other stories. He designed us to live in relationship with other people, which is why the very vehicle that he left for us, the catalyst that he left for us, is the church. A group of people that comes together in relationship with other people to encourage one another, to live alongside one another. He didn't just say, go into all the world and sit by yourself. He didn't tell us that. He said, go because your stories are going to connect. Go and make disciples. Go and bear fruit. Go and multiply. You see, it's this very idea that our stories connect with other people that motivate us all the time here at church to push this idea of life groups. And you heard in the video, if you were here for announcements this morning, life groups kick off today. There's some that meet tonight. There are a bunch that meet on Wednesday. Why is it? Why is it that we push life groups so hard? Well, as a church, it's our goal to try to fill up your calendar with one more thing. That's what we're after. No, absolutely not. I know full well there's not many of us in the room that need any more to do. But I don't want you to do life groups. I want you to be a part of life groups. Because we can be challenged in the big room. And we can listen and we can wrestle with in the big room. But most of the fruitful conversation that happens in a living room. It happens at a dining room table. It happens while riding in a car with someone. It happens in a smaller group of people where we can be honest and we can be transparent and we can be real with where we're at. And that's why it's our goal to push as many of us into life groups to be a part of a living room setting where we don't just hear and walk away, but we can converse about, where we can experience godly relationships that challenge and move us forward. We even try to make it as easy as possible. We put everything that we're going to talk about in our life groups in the bulletin every week, on the app, on the website. So it's not like, I don't know what we're going to talk about, so I don't want to go. We already took care of that one. Find another excuse. It's in there. Because we believe so much that godly relationships move us forward, that we want everyone to experience this. Relationships that challenge us, relationships that move our story closer to Jesus. Godly relationships move our faith forward. My daughter Reagan, back a couple months ago, her very best friend moved away. And her best friend's name is Ella. And Reagan and Ella met in the nursery here. They've been friends pretty much as long as they've been alive, since they've known to have a friend. They've been together. And I remember learning that Ella's family, Brent and Emily, they were having to move away. And this year, Reagan, she normally went to Tri-County, and this year she transitioned over to the public school. And she was kind of nervous about that, but everything that she talked about being nervous about leading up to it was always, but Ella's going to be there. And so they were going to ride the same bus together, and Ella's going to be there. And she knew that Ella was going to be at the school, and she knew that Ella was going to be in the lunchroom. And so she found security for all of her nervous areas that Ella's going to be there. And then Ella wasn't there. And I remember the day that, we knew, but the kids didn't know. And I remember the day that Ella told Reagan that she was moving away. And I knew it was going to happen after school, so I was just waiting for the phone call. And pretty soon I get a phone call from Emily, my wife, and she said, Reagan's on her way up. She just wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. And so I kind of walked out of my office and down the hall, and I stood in the lobby and kind of waited for her. And Emily and her came in, and Reagan saw me kind of across the lobby out here. And she dropped her backpack and she just ran over to me. And she was just crying and crying and crying. And I said, Riggs, what's going on? I already knew, but she said, Dad, Ella's moving. I said, I know, Riggs. And she said, what am I going to do? And as a dad, I never want my kids to hurt. And so to see Reagan hurting like that, and see her crying so much, and knowing all of the fears that she had are now real fears that she has, because there's not that security of her best friend being there. I said, Reagan, it'll be okay. And she said to me, Dad, but how do I know? And this is all through tears. And I said, Reagan, you don't know. I said, and I hate it that your best friend is moving away. I said, because some of my good friends are moving away, which are her parents. Said, I know. And she just cried and cried, and she finally looked up at me and she said, Dad, I just don't know what to do now. I said, well, Riggs, I said, you don't stop being friends with Ella just because she moves away. I said, and I know things are going to be different. And I know a lot of the things that you were scared about or nervous about, going to a different school, are now things that you're nervous about all over again. And she knows a whole bunch of people at the school. And she said, but Dad, I don't know who I'm going to have now. And I said, Riggs, I said, you know a lot of people at school. There's people from church and people from softball. I said, but here's what I also know. What? I said, Riggs, I know that when you go to school that you're not going to be alone. And I know when you get on the bus that you're not alone. And I know when you walk into the lunchroom for the first time, you're not alone. And I know when you sit down in your classroom that you're not alone. I said, because Jesus promises us that he's not going to leave us. I said, you like singing about Jesus downstairs, don't you? Yeah. I said, okay. I said, well, if you're going to sing about how good he is, you have to trust that his relationship is good now, and that he loves you, and that he cares for you, and that he's going to be with you. And so you can be nervous and you can be scared, but I know when you go into all those scary places, that you can always talk to him. I said, I know it's not the same. I said, but he's always there. Okay. And it still didn't stop the tears completely. You see, friends, our first relationship in our story is a relationship with Jesus. And if that relationship is not there, if it is not held onto, if it's not drawn into, then all the other relationships will be fractured. There will be missing There'll be something missing in all of them. But if we have a relationship with Jesus that we hold on to, then our story is designed by the creator of the universe to connect with other people. And people will walk in and out of our lives. But it's God's design from the very beginning that we don't do life alone. That we connect with other people, that we are a friend like Jesus, and that we go and we multiply that friendship over and over again. Because godly relationships move our faith forward. They challenge us to be better and more like Jesus. This morning, if our relationship with Jesus is not right, that's the first place to start. If we're not a friend like Jesus, if right now our friendships are conditional, right now our friendships are based on what we get in return, that's not a friend like Jesus. Maybe that's the second place we start. And if we're just soaking this in but not turning it over to others, then we're not multiplying and bearing fruit. That godly relationships move our faith forward. If we're not in one of these type of relationships, then that's where we need to begin today. Why don't we go ahead and stand together? We're going to worship and sing together. And the three questions that we asked moving forward are the same questions that we ask while we worship. Am I a friend of Jesus? Or do I have this warped and jaded view of who he is? Am I a friend like Jesus to the people around me? Or do I just call when I need something? And the third question, am I multiplying this friendship over? Am I giving this gift of friendship and connecting with other people around me? Bearing fruit, good fruit of godly things to the people around me. In hopes that I don't just help them follow Jesus, but together we follow Jesus. And within that relationship, our story moves forward in faith. Let's worship and sing together.